let's get back into the buggy. It's been sitting ever since I used it in West Virginia, but I want to use it again and we need to do some upgrades. So winter's coming, it's getting pretty cold. Let's see if I can get this girl to start. Look at that, she actually looks pretty decent under here. Even the battery's got some juice in it. Welcome back to Spank Ranch Garage. It's been a couple months since I've done any buggy stuff. This thing's been sitting in the backyard under a tarp, waiting for its next journey. That was a real cold start, I promise you. It caught me off guard. I cannot believe how quickly it started. I didn't even pump the gas. It literally fired like third compression cycle. This thing's very loyal. However, we got a couple projects in mind, so if you haven't watched my West Virginia trip video, go ahead and watch that. You'll understand what's going on with some of this, but let's get into it. For this upgrade, we have two very important changes to make to the buggy that will hopefully increase my ride comfort, also my reliability and parts sourcing. First one, some 30-inch beadlocks, 30-inch tires on 14-inch beadlock. Currently I'm running a 28-inch tire on standard steel wheels with Volkswagen bolt patterns. We see how that went for me in West Virginia. It went very poorly. These are wheels off a Polaris Razor 1000. Single beadlock, they're aluminum, they're a bit lighter, but also they are available everywhere. I could go into any power sports store, buy a replacement tire, replacement wheel, and that's what I need when I'm out traveling with this thing. So these are very, very high offset wheels. That's going to cause its whole own set of issues, but we'll get into that. Next upgrade are Fox air shocks for the rear of this thing. This is a 12-inch stroke shock. Ryan, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I was an asshole. You told me not to go air shocks. However, I went with air shocks anyway. I have my reasons for that. We can chat about it later. But anyway, these are very light, very adjustable, and I'll be putting these in the rear of the buggy and eliminating the torsion bars along with the crappy shocks that are on it right now. So my second biggest complaint when I was out riding this thing is absolutely how rough it rides and how violent it is when it bottoms out. So these will substantially help with that. However, these alone are not going to do it. Here's the huge change. The backspacing is wildly different with the side-by-side wheels compared to the buggy wheels. Buggy wheels, I'm running approximately a 2-inch backspace, meaning 2 inches of the wheel is inboard of the hub mounting surface. And on the buggy, we're more like 5.5 inches. So that means I need to gain 3 inches of inbound clearance, and it's gonna suck my track width in, you know, about 6 inches overall. It's got its downsides, but it's also got its upsides. Now you might be saying, why the heck would anybody do this? I've only got 6.5 inches to the spring plate. Well, the reason this is a good problem to have is because now I have a reason to bump this trailing arm way out. And you might say, well, why do you want to do that? Look at how short these factory Volkswagen axles are. If I want to go long travel on this, the shorter the axle is, the more extreme the angle is at the CV per every inch of wheel travel. So the wider I can make this, the more travel I can get out of the same style CV joint. The air shocks with 12 inches of travel, and that's 12 inches of travel at the tire, so if I add some mechanical advantage to it, we could even go higher than that. So it comes down to this game of finding an axle that'll work with this changed length. I have a ride coming up in approximately 2 weeks, really to do a proper build the way I want to, with fully custom trailing arms, some type of unit bearing from a car, and a custom axle. I probably won't be able to get all that done in time, so I am going to have to reach some kind of fair compromise here. To my surprise, the shock that was on here actually feels pretty good and offers a lot of dampening. I wouldn't know that though, because we took some hits that really, very neck breaking. Start off by determining how much travel we have currently, and then we'll pick our goals from there. Look at that, nice. Okay, so that is your torsion bar, and it runs into the center of the frame there and dives into the splines, and then, you know, that's what provides your rear spring. But we're gonna get rid of all that. From the floor to the center of the hub, 63 inches at full droop. Shock has bottomed far before we'd hit that lower bump stop there. I mean, that's an inch away, and an inch here is probably 2 inches out here. But we're gonna deal with that. We are now at 69 3/4. That means to me that we have 6 3/4 inch of suspension travel. That is mighty sad. So that would explain why my back hurts after a day of thrashing this thing on some whoopty rocky trails. Factory little shorty axle at full droops at 14.25 degrees. I thought these stock CVs were only rated to like 12 or 13 degrees. Apparently they'll do a little more. I mean, I've been running this thing this way and nothing's damaged. They don't seem to bind at that point, but we know that this is safe, so we know that it'll be safe the other way. The CV doesn't care what direction it's pointing in. Let's go over some trailing arm math so we can understand exactly what's going on here. So I took a bunch of measurements tonight. Full droop to the floor, axle straight to the floor, bottomed out on my stock shock to the floor, and then bottomed out on the stop. This is with the shock removed. This is the full sweep of the factory trailing arm. Determined this thing only had 6 inches 3/4 of travel as is. As we went riding it, if I take off the factory shock or whatever, whoever had that shock on there, we come up to 9 inches of total travel. And when that actually bottoms out on the travel stop, the belly pan is 5 inches off the ground with a 30-inch tire. That's not bad, and that's quite an improvement just from removing the shock. I could stop there, but we're not going to stop there. So anyway, based on the different offsets of wheels to maintain the same track width with the side-by-side wheels, I need to extend the trailing arm 4 inches. Let's see what that does to our travel. All right, so we know we have potentially 9 inches of travel. Do a little trig on this. Your travel in one direction, you know, from the axle being level is up 4.5 inches. Do the tan of 15 degrees. 4.5 is our travel over X. This is a distance we're trying to find. This is kind of arbitrary, but we use it for our 4-inch extension. It comes out to 16 3/4 inches. Ironically, that's just about the length of the axle, but that's kind of unrelated in this case. All right, so now we're going to extend the trailing arm by 4 inches. X plus 4 is our new leg here. Let's determine our new travel. So using this 15 degrees, which is what I was able to get out of these axles before the CV binds, that puts our new travel at 11.12 inches. I'm okay with that. I was shooting for 12, but 12 is kind of an arbitrary number that I picked in my head. However, this is on factory Type 1 CVs, right? Factory Beetle CV axles. They're not very good. They don't offer a lot of angle. Just by switching to a Bus CV or a Thing CV, we move up to 15.14 inches on the exact same setup. So I very easily could order these axles on Rock Auto, get the conversion flanges and the conversion stubs, and step up to 15 inches of travel. So I think for now, we're gonna draw the line here. Let's run the stock bug axles. Since I have a bunch of spares, I can cut them up, chop them up, extend them, whatever I need. And we'll shoot for this 11 inches of travel. On second thought, I think I'm actually gonna stretch this arm more than I originally said I would. I think I'm gonna go 5 inches wider and also 2 inches longer to slightly extend the wheelbase of the buggy. This also gives me more travel per shock stroke and greater mechanical advantage on my shock. So I went out there out of curiosity and measured the stock spring plate. It moves from -11 to 18 degrees between its stock bump stops. It's 29 degrees of rotation. So what you got to consider is when this arm is traveling up, that wheel is also traveling forward of the transaxle and basically under and forward of the transaxle. So stretching this arm helps to eliminate a little bit of that. Exactly how far does the wheel move? Do a little Pythagorean theorem here. You know, if you take your center line of 4.5 inches of travel, we know that the plate is going to move half of its total travel upwards, which is 14.5 degrees. Find the length of side B right here. Now, when this thing, picture it's this way, now that it's at the top of its travel, now that's your hypotenuse. You know the length of your hypotenuse. Pythagorean theorem, 16.8 is your new distance of B. That means the wheel actually only moves forward 0.6 of an inch. Final thing to consider is this math of how far the wheel moves forward is based off of a stock length trailing arm at stock travel. We are going to increase the travel substantially. It means it's going to move forward more, but using a longer arm extends your swing radius, and therefore you get a little less forward translation as it travels through the suspension travel. Okay. First time ever having a trailing arm off of one of these things, so let's build a fixture, cut it up, extend it, weld it back together. Now we got a trailing arm fixture. All right, so I got this fixture bolted to the hub mounting surface here. Once I cut the arm, this is gonna come straight out and back to my location where I want my new wheel bearing location to be. Then it gets tacked to the table. That holds everything square here. Then all I gotta do is connect the dots. Cutting that in half actually went fairly well. So I cut it very close to the bearing, and now we've shifted this out 5 inches, back 2 inches. So this looks crazy now, and I'm gonna have to drink a couple beers to figure out how I wanna connect the dots here, but I think it's gonna start to take shape. You just gotta see it. I know right now it doesn't look like anything, but just see it. Time to get imaginative. The rough shape is taking place. Obviously, I want to grind this and make this radius look, you know, natural and everything, but we're getting there. That's 2 sides done. At this point, the fixture has served its purpose. I can unbolt this and flip it around and do my thing, and then I'm gonna lay some fat, nasty welds on this, and that's that. Ran the welder out of wire, but either way, there it is. That's a completed arm. It's got a little more welding required, you know, some grinding, some cleanup, but that's one. So I think people are gonna look at this and say, holy crap, you just added so much leverage to this. It's gonna bend the inner arm, it's gonna twist at the shock mount, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that. You gotta remember that center line of wheel is where your load is. I'm moving my wheel in 6 inches. Right? Look how much leverage is on a factory Volkswagen setup here with a buggy wheel on it. Right? This whole thing's hanging off the end of the hub. Shock mounted tire, you got 4 inches or so. I'm probably gonna be even tighter than that with the new setup. So while this arm looks ridiculous and long, the actual loads and torque on the wheel bearing are less, and I think everything else will just be all right. The side-by-side wheel mounted to the Volkswagen drum. There's a video I put up about how I did that. Some 3D printing. So now I've got the axle split in 2 here. Got the trailing arm level. So now I'm going to determine my axle length, and I'm going to sleeve these and weld it up. Now that may not be permanent, it may be permanent, we'll see how that goes, but either way, I gotta connect this axle so I can put my digital angle finder on here, determine my CV angles at the top of my travel, the bottom of my travel, then we can determine my full stroke. Then I can start to mount the shock. 18 degrees. That's a bit more than we intended on. It's a true 18 degrees there. The axles don't seem to be binding, though people really say you can't get this kind of travel out of these. I don't know. I'm not seeing the problem here. I mean, I still got plenty of play here, right? So we're not topping them out. I got play in the center, so we're not bottoming them out. You know, they feel buttery smooth. Even when I shift it to the side and shift it to that side, I think it's safe at this angle. I mean, it's not operating at this angle all the time. It's only when it's totally bottomed out, but I'm not sure what to say there. So I'm gonna bring this down to level again, because I do expect the bushings to flex, and I don't want the axle to hit into the trans. So look, I got a ton of room here. Now let's go all the way down and see what happens. Now with the suspension at full droop, still got plenty here. Should have less angle here because I haven't touched these travel stops yet. Yeah, so this is still at the stock, you know, 15 degrees or so. Means to me I could drop 3 more degrees of droop, and then we're getting to that point where the axle's kind of maxed out. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. So I ground my bump stops and my spring plates until I was happy with the axle angle. I have 17.5 degrees going up, 17 degrees coming down. Should be safe. 70 1/4, 56 3/4. That gives us 13.5 inches of travel. Okay, so this is kind of what it's going to look like. Got some 1/2 inch hardware down here. This all goes together pretty nice. It actually clears the frame nicely here. It's got like a bend right around this, which is cool. So looks like my shock mount's going to come off the main hoop here, probably loop back to the rear down bars, and then maybe I'll make some kind of support down to the seat harness or to the harness bars. I may want to make this dual shear at some point because I can see there's going to be some rotational forces here. We'll see. I can get a nice fat weld on this, and this is 120 wall steel. I may not need it, but I'm going to keep an eye on that. Dual shear it if I need to. Here's where I ended up with the shock tower. It's just tacked into place for now. Did a nice dual shear mount up here. Ended up going dual shear down here as well, just to take a lot of the stress off the bolt. Wow. I still got to weld all this in and paint it. I got some clearancing I need to do as well. Full travel, I get a little close to binding in a couple spots, so I want to head around with a grinder, make some clearance, but that is it. This is full droop. That's full bump. You can see I still got 3 inches of shaft travel there. That's intentional because when I do eventually run taller tires, I'm going to need this arm to be able to travel further upwards. But anyway, that's it. Everything works, so it's time to tear it down, finally weld it, paint it, and finish the other side up. Made in USA. Okay. This came with some kind of grease. We'll see how that performs. I think she's going to be a big squeaker. Alright, finally ready to drop this on the ground and charge the shocks to get our ride bit figured out. All right, that's a start. All right, things may look a little different or cleaned up in here. I stopped filming when I finished this, and I actually took it for a ride, tested it all out, and brought it back. Things went awesome. The only issue I had was I did not have enough pressure in the rear shocks. I charged them up here in the garage at, you know, it was 55 degrees out, or, you know, I had the heat on in here, it was probably 75 degrees. I got up the mountains, it was like 28 degrees. This thing was sitting very low, and me and my girlfriend riding around in it, the belly pan was smacking rocks everywhere. I had like 5 inches of ground clearance. So I'm gonna show you guys what I came up with for charging these shocks. I don't know what an official rig looks like, but this is what I came up with. This is a CGA, what is it, 590, 580, whatever. It goes into a nitrogen bottle, into a valve, into a T. I got a 1/4 inch hydraulic hose here. It's about 48 inches long with a tire chuck on the end of it. I got a gauge, and then I got a bleed valve here, which is a needle valve. So I can run these up to their max pressure, and then I can bleed it off very slowly down to what I want to see on the gauge. So I'm going to shoot these up with pressure now. We'll lower it down on the ground, see what it looks like. I'm actually going to wear my blast shield for this because I don't trust all the components on this. It's just something I literally threw together with crap I had laying around, so yeah. Alright, bleed valve closed, tank valve cracked open. Now I will pressurize these up. Okay. It's at where I want it. That's 500. That's the max. Max we're allowed to put into these shocks. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to the other side, do the same thing. Okay. Now we'll see where it rides, and if it needs to go down some, then we will adjust it from there. I think honestly it's going to be probably pretty close the way it is. I tell you that about 300 psi ain't enough, because that's all I had in my bottle before, and it was not enough to make it happen. So that's where she's settling out at there. Of course, the bushings are already squeaking after one ride, kind of like I thought they would. So I have the shocks at their max rated pressure. We have a ton of ground clearance. I think like 14 inches. This thing's all the way up. I don't even have that much droop left. You know, maybe 3 inches droop or so. So that's a little tall, but that's okay. I can always let nitrogen out at the trail. So I'm gonna leave it there for now. Dropping it off the skid steer, it looks a smidge under damped. Like I might want a little bit more compression dampening. I'll have to watch it in slow-mo and see what I think of it, but also there aren't occupants in it, and shock pressure is a little higher than it will be because I'm going to lower the ride height. So anyway, I just wanted to drop it from, you know, 4 or 5 feet a couple times. It's nice to see how it acts and then make some decisions from there. So this is still on factory valving. I don't know if you hear that, but somebody is doing a mag dump right now. This is America after all. It is 9:30 on a Wednesday, so it's a little strange, but I'm not worried about it. All right, folks, that's gonna wrap up this episode of Spank Ranch Garage. To sum it all up, we took the buggy, we extended the trailing arms 5 inches on each side and 2 inches back. We're running side-by-side wheels off a Can-Am X3. They're beadlock, 14-inch wheels, and then I'm running a 30-inch side-by-side tire on this. So overall, the buggy came out to 69 inches wide in the rear, which is perfect. I want to stay underneath 72 inches because I'm trying to ride this in places that a typical side-by-side would go, hence the side-by-side tires and some other things like that. So All in all, we started with 6 3/4 inches of suspension travel. I put these 12-inch stroke Fox shocks on here with a little bit of mechanical ratio. We have just under 14 inches of actual wheel travel, and we have quite a bit more to go if I want to file the bump stops and go with axles that have a little bit more travel. So that wraps up this episode. I think next time you'll see this buggy, it's going to be decorated as a Christmas tree. I'm going on a charity Christmas ride next weekend, and then after that, I think we're going to pull this motor off. I got another one on the bench. We're going to build it, put a cam in it, maybe some dual carbs, and see if we can make some horsepower here. So see you next time, Spank Ranch Garage.